Now, one of the things that separates me from a lot of other folks out there in the note business is I will literally show you how to go find deals. I, I'm a big believer that if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you give him a tackle and reel, you could feed him for a lifetime. You've heard that saying, that analogy, right? Well, there's so much product. There's so many deals out there. You don't need to be beholden to a certain seller. There's other people that are like, oh, you can only buy from me because you're too small. The banks won't sell to you. That's a bunch of hogwash. Okay. That's a bunch of BS. Because banks will sell to you individually if you know what to say and what not to say. Okay. But there's a whole different variety of different ways that we find notes. Okay. Places to find note sellers. Obviously, the banks. Now, I've been getting a bombardment of questions. Hey, can you buy from Signature Bank in New York? Can you buy from Silicon Valley Bank? Can you buy from these other banks that have gone out of business? The question to that is yes and no. Okay. Yes, you can buy from banks up to the point that they get shut down, or the FDIC steps in, or they get sold. Okay. You just got to close before it gets sold. Because what happens when a bank is shut down or is taken over, those assets can't be sold off. If a new bank comes in and buys, like Silicon Valley Bank, and Silicon Valley Bank is this unique kind of thing. They weren't your traditional bank of dealing mortgages or do like commercial notes. They were dealing basically, with startups, hedge funds in San Francisco. I mean, they were dealing with players. I mean, was it 80 to 90% of their depositors had more than $250,000 in each account? I mean, that's some players, baby, right? So they're a unique situation. They didn't do a lot of mortgages. They don't do a lot of commercial property. They had a different aspect of things. I mean, they still had some of that, but not like your JP Morgan Chase, stuff like that. Now, you're not going to go buy from Chase or Citi or Wells Fargo, the top 5 or 6 banks out there, because they're just too big. They're not going to deal with a one-off note most of the time. They're going to deal with $50 million at a time. But that still leaves you like 4,000 plus different banks. Now, when a bank is sold, okay, like you can go to the FDIC.gov website and see the list of banks that have been sold over the years, and you can see who the acquiring bank or the acquiring institution. What happens when a bank is sold? The acquiring bank has to sign what's called a loss share agreement, which basically means for a year they can't sell that bank's assets at less than 80, 85 cents on the dollar. Okay. Most of them don't want to anyway. They're going to hold on to it for a year. Then after a year, they're going to have this portfolio they call it a legacy portfolio, that now that they can sell off. Now, if you go back in history, let's take our time machine back to when Bank of America bought Countrywide for 20 cents on the dollar. Some of you guys might remember that, right? It was first New Century Mortgage, went out of business, had $1 billion option call because they had all these mortgages that were starting to default, and the acquiring bank asked them to buy their notes back. Well, New Century couldn't buy them all back, so they went out of business. So then what happened is that this acquiring institution who had the bank, Countrywide had bought most of the stuff, they were stuck with this non-performing stuff. They went out of business. They didn't have all this money to operate this. So Bank of America swooped in and bought them up for 20 cents a dollar, thanks to the Fed and all that good stuff and the SEC back in the day. Well, Bank of America couldn't sell those notes for a year at a discount. But you know what they did? In that year, they started reaching out to all the borrowers, say, hey, you're on this negative AM mortgage, or you're on this thing. We're going to offer you a no-cost mod, put you in a 30-year mortgage at 4 or 5%. And then what they did is they got all these people to modify their loans. Even people didn't open their email or mail. Here's a funny story, is that Bank of America first sent out letter campaign to these borrowers. People weren't opening the mortgage or opening mail, so these people didn't get a very good return rate when people could do a modification to get out of this bad mortgage. So what Bank of America did is they switched the marketing. Hey, we're going to go ahead and move you. We're going to go ahead and modify your loan, whether you say something or not. We won't if you reach out to us, but you have until this date to reach out to us, tell us you don't want us to do that. Well, they modified. Nobody was complaining about going to a 4% mortgage rate at that time, with rates being at 7, 8%. So what did they do that for? Because those mortgages now at 30-year mortgage at a 4% interest was much more marketable on the secondary market. So then what they do after a year, they sold all these mortgages off at par or value. So these assets they bought at 20 cents a dollar, turned around and sold them at 80, 90, 100 cents a dollar. That's why the year after all the TARP money, Bank of America didn't lend $1 of that TARP money out that the government gave them. They paid it all back, and they reported record profits, because that's what happened. They bought non-performing debt and turned it into re-performing debts. You can do the same thing. You can do it too, especially in today's market, ladies and gentlemen, okay? So banks have stuff, and we buy from a variety of banks. Yes, we bought from Wells Fargo. Yes, we've we bought a portfolio and worked with some portfolios from the other banks. But you're primarily going to be buying from regional banks, not small banks that have like one branch. You're going to be looking for banks that usually have at least 5 branches or more. And there's still over 1,500 banks that fall in that classification. There's over 5,000, 6,000 mortgage companies out there too. And lending institutions are another great way too. We buy them from hedge funds. We buy them from mortgage bankers who originate them off and have a warehouse line that they need to get off their line. Servicing companies. We're in the process of buying some notes from a servicing company out of Chicago on some stuff across the country. A lot of times servicing companies will have their own like trading platform that they're selling the notes of their clients or the people that they service loans for will want to sell stuff. Got a question here. Yeah, you're welcome. That B of A, that's bar. Yeah, that's you're welcome. But that's what happens. I mean, you can do the exact same thing. I'll give you another story example. Okay, there's this guy who bought. There's a known investor out there. He doesn't teach, but he's a guy that I learned some stuff from beforehand. Back when everything was hitting the fan, second mortgages weren't even worth the paper they're written on. So he got a grant. He got a government grant to buy 7,500 second mortgages for basically nothing. And he immediately, it was Dean Engel, okay? He went to Columbia, smart. Somehow he got a grant from the government to buy 7,500 second mortgages for nothing. And basically, he just did that. He worked out solutions, reduced settlements, payment plans. I wish that would be an opportunity for us right now, but it's not the case that it is. He just is a great, unique situation, a unique time frame to help this lending institution to get the stuff off their books, or the bank government to get off those books. But that's what you want to do: buy non-performing at big discount, work to get them back on track, and either keep it for cash flow or sell it at premium once you've got it back reworking again. Okay, you'll see some note sellers at different note conferences and conventions. You got to be careful. Not all note sellers are created equal. I put this up there because there's opportunity for you to network with other note investors that may have some stuff. I'm not always a big fan of note sellers at conferences. A lot of these are the platforms out there that are low-hanging fruit that you're going to be overpaying. Okay. Yeah, let me answer this question here. Mark asked a question. Can you talk about the reasons why a bank wants to sell non-performing notes? How does a bad note affect the bank's ability to lend within its portfolio? Okay, so great question here. A bank, here's the thing. For every dollar that comes into a bank in a deposit, right? Every dollar they come in, they lend that thing out, they leverage that out 15 to 50 times, right? Okay. They get $1 in, they're giving you 1% of 1%, and they're lending it out at 4% for mortgages, 8% for commercial loans, car loans, 12% for other things, 24% credit cards. Okay. If they have a mortgage that's not paying them, it costs them 10 times that at least in fees they're not collecting. Okay. And B, they have to start putting money away into reserves to offset those losses. So that's more money they got to pull off the street that they can't lend out 10 to 50 times. Okay. So a bank, well, a lender, that's a bank. A lender, I don't have to have reserves. Me technically being a lender, I don't have to have reserves. I mean, it's still good to have reserves in case stuff goes right. But what I'm saying, a bank would rather, most times it gets to that point, they'd rather sell the note off and get 50, 60, 70 cents on the dollar, take that 20, 30% loss because they don't want to own the real estate. Because if they've got to take a property back, it's going to cost them usually twice to triple what it would cost us. They've got to hire bonded and insured people to list a property, and they got to try to sell it at the peak there for you. They don't want to own REO. Okay. Reserve's a big one. So that's why they would rather sell the note up 50, 60 cents on the dollar to somebody like you and me. They can get that 50% in, write that other 50% off their books, and then start lending that 50, 60% off. Start lending it out there again. Put it back in the market. Okay. Banks don't want to own real estate because real estate is a non-performing asset to them. It's money tied up in an asset they can't leverage in sort of fashion. Yes, they sell it off, great, but it costs them more to rehab it. A great example is HUD. You go back to 2000, was it 10, 11, maybe a little bit later, maybe 2014. HUD used to sell a lot of foreclosures, right? Well, HUD announced that they would stop selling basically mostly foreclosures and start selling the portfolio of the debt off because they could sell it quicker, and it gave opportunities to investors like me that would buy that debt. I had more options to negotiate and work with the borrower, be a lot more flexible than they did. For them to didn't sell the property off, it was just a non-performing asset in their books that was dragging down reserves. So those are really the 2-3 major reasons that a bank would sell a note off. They'd rather get 50% of the note now and move. Now, also too, is you look at, I hate to say this, but the media. I dealt with a bank in San Antonio a few years back who had a portfolio of loans, and what they were is most of them were performing, some were non-performing. Okay, but they knew they weren't the greatest loan. These were some subprime borrowers that they knew that they were going to have to start foreclosing on some of these, and they didn't want to be the bad guy. They didn't want to foreclose on the people who live in the community. They'd rather sell that portfolio off to me, keep the deposit relationship with these borrowers, and let me be the bad guy and foreclose. So yeah, they gave those assets to me. And they didn't say they gave them to me, but they gave them to me at a discount. Even performing, I bought the portfolio basically with a student of ours at a 20-25% discount on performing paper. They took a big discount. I even saw this at Lakeside Servicing out of Florida. A few years back, they had all this performing stuff. They were selling at 75, 80 cents on the dollar. Like, why are you taking a big discount on performing paper like that? I was like, this is because you think Florida is going to, and you want to get them off before the market values start to drop. And your paper's upside down like it was back in the day. So that's part of the reason that banks will sell stuff. But they'd rather get the 50 cents on the dollar, 60 cents on the dollar, 70 cents on the dollar now, take a little bit of a haircut, but then have that money go out. And then that's where we come and make our money, by buying it at a cheap price and being able to work it out with the homeowner some sort of fashion. It gives us a lot of flexibilities and exit strategy. Okay. You can find notes on LinkedIn from other note sellers, hedge funds. One of the great places that we market to on a regular basis is LinkedIn. And by going and searching for the job titles that these asset managers have, and we'll talk about that later on. Private sellers, we jump on. I mean, you can pull a list of people that have owner finance notes, and by looking at the county records, looking for deeds and stuff like that. I'm not a fan of that. I think that's an old ass way of doing it. It's an old ass way of marketing. Now, I will go on and reach out to some private sellers directly. I'll find them and contact them directly. But I'm usually using like the county records, the county clerk to find assignment of mortgages, or doing like a deed search for self-directed IRA investors to find stuff on there. And of course, your foreclosure list. Your foreclosure list is full of non-performing notes, right? And while it gives you a list of notes that are going to foreclosure, I don't usually target the actual asset, the actual property that's on the list. I use that asset as a warm lead into the lender, through the attorney, through the back door of the bank, to get on their list of everything they have in the country. So if you've been around, or you go to YouTube, you'll see us talking about how we use foreclosure lists. Like, we get it from Foreclosure Listing Service, FLS Online here in Texas. They send us a list for like Harris County, and I'll look at that list and I'll identify smaller banks, regional banks, and see 1 or 2 notes that they're selling. I know they're going to sell it in 2 weeks of the foreclosure auction. I'm not going to bid on that asset, but I'm going to use that asset as just a warm lead into the bank by saying, hey, I see you got this note you're foreclosing on. Do you have anything else coming on your pipeline or all across the country they're going to take a look at? Okay. And we did a whole webinar just on finding note deals. We actually might need to might be time to update this a little bit. I'm finding note deals in the new year and go from there. But that's a great video where you kind of break down all the different ways that we find note deals for you. Okay. The different departments inside the banks, they go by specific names depending on how big they are. You have the special assets department, is a large institution. So if you're going to be reaching out to banks, like we will call banks on a pretty regular basis, we have over the years, one of the few that shows you how to do that. You're not going to call the main customer service line. You're not going to call the foreclosure department. You're going to call the main corporate office and ask to speak to the special assets department. And this would be the larger institutions. And they may have a commercial and a residential special assets department. Secondary marketing department is another name that they may go by for some of the more regional banks and the real estate investment trusts out there, or some of the different hedge funds that'll have stuff that's called secondary marketing department. Whole loan sales department. This is often REITs and large insurance companies because they're buying in bulk and they may sell in bulk. Okay. Or they might may buy in bulk and sell them off individually. We've had that success with that as well too. And then of course the chief credit risk officer. This can be your small to regional banks, individuals that handle their debt sales. You may actually, in some of the smaller banks, maybe be the actual loan officer that originated the loan or the banker who's handling the non-performing note. We've had that happen many times. But those are the 4 job titles that you look for. We'll search for these on LinkedIn, and we'll target 50 to 100 people in these job categories per day to build a database. And we've done a really good job. This is one of the things that we've done is use a service called octopuscrm.io. It's a Google Chrome plugin that works really, really well to help you automate your LinkedIn marketing. I mean, we've grown our LinkedIn from 6,000 connections to just south of 30,000 connections in the last 4 or 5 years using that one tool alone. I'm a huge advocate of it because it's a great way to market not only to asset managers and banks, but other note investors, other people out there. We use it in a lot of places. Okay, but if anything, take a look at that screen, and then you could literally go and Google special assets manager, special assets department, and finding all these people on LinkedIn that have a job categories. Okay. There's some websites out there to help you find notes. You can go to laneguide.com. Lane Guide, been around for over 40 years. Richard Lane, unfortunately passed away about 2 years ago, and took Lane Guide about a year to kind of get back up on track, but they're back open and operating again. And they are a great place to find who's bought what bank, and find some internal numbers and emails to the special asset department managers. Okay. Bauer Financial. Bauer Financial is a third-party reporting agency that pulls the quarterly reports that banks file and credit unions file with the FDIC and the credit unions version of the FDIC. I buy this list once a quarter. It's about $300, and I buy it for. I ask for, and then what they do is they basically take the quarterly reports and put them all into a spreadsheet, so I can see on a breakdown by breakdown of the 1,500 banks that have 5 branches or more, what type of default rate they have, how much of their portfolio is in default, how much their residential portfolio is in distress, commercial, what's in distress now, what's 30 to 89 days late, which is coming down the next quarter. So it's a really great resource, BauerFinancial.com. It's usually easier just to pick up the phone and call them. Their website has some product offerings. You may not know which one it is, so just pick up the phone and give them a phone call. You can go to the FDIC.gov and see which banks have gone out of business. You can also, the FDIC also handles some asset sales. You're probably not going to buy from there most of the cases. A lot of the banks bigger banks are moving their stuff to DebtX, First Magnus Financial, stuff like that. That's fine. Plenty of smaller banks are still selling stuff off individually. I like to also pull lists of banks and mortgage bankers from going to the Texas Savings and Mortgage Lending and Licensing website. Now, it used to be Texas is the friendliest state. If you didn't know this already, we're just friendly people here. But it's one of the friendliest states to lend in because it's fast foreclosures, and we also have a lot of rights when it comes to being a landlord, a property owner. Evictions are pretty fast here too. With it being a 21-day foreclosure process, that's the fastest in the country. So a lot of lenders, a lot of mortgage companies like to lend here in Texas. And it's not too hard to get your license to be a lender here. So you can go to the Texas Savings and Mortgage Lending website and request a download of all the mortgage companies, all the loan officers, all the mortgage bankers and servicing companies doing business here in Texas. And we'll download this list about once every 6 months. It gives us a new list of, and what's great is it gives us a list of the company names, their contact emails and phone numbers. So it becomes a great thing that we'll drop into our email system and do a drip marketing campaign, reaching out to these mortgage companies. Or, once every 2 to 3 months, we'll pick up the phone and do a calling banks blitz where I'm just calling asset managers for a day, and you guys can literally watch and peek over my shoulder while I'm doing it. There's other states out there like California. I think it's calling the California Department of Real Estate. It used to send you a floppy disk. Now I think it's a digital download. They can send you. Don't ask me specifically. Each state's a little bit different. Many states will just send you to the National Mortgage Loan Originating website, which is not easy at all to find. You can go there. You can actually pull a list of servicing companies. 180 servicing companies that show up on there. And actually, I had my VA do that, to go in there and pull a list of servicing companies and contact information to give me a bunch of resources, which is pretty cool. Okay. And then, of course, Scotsman Guide. If you're a mortgage broker, you've probably heard of Scotsman Guide before. If not, you're like, who the hell is this? Your guide, Scott? It says Scotsman. Is this your guide? No. Scotsman Guide is basically, it's a resource for mortgage companies, mortgage lenders. I used to use it to find when I had like a difficult loan or different loan programs. This literally used to be a big, like ESPN the magazine, big, awkwardly sized periodical. Well, Scotsman Guide, I use it to find commercial lenders, And then I'll look for portfolio lenders or warehouse line lenders on there. I even look for non-QM lenders. There was a lot of subprime lenders I found on there that I could reach out to, not to originate loans from, but to get a hold of their special assets or secondary marketing department to buy their distressed debt. And that's what I use Scotsman Guide for. It's free. You can go to scotsmanguide.com. I think it's Kevin Hebner's the owner of that. He's actually reached out to me before because he liked how we use Scotsman Guide to find debt, which is kind of an interesting aspect of things. So check it out. Some of the different websites out there to help you find notes. Okay. Platforms. This is kind of an answer to somebody that asked it earlier with the different platforms. You can go to paperstack.com and look at some stuff. You can go to Watermark Exchange. Val Satier's got some stuff on there. Doesn't have it really updated too much, but if you reach out to Val directly, he's usually got some stuff available. SN Servicing has a trading platform. You would deal with David Polio. Go to snservicing.com and look under investors. Dev Expert. I throw them up there because they're a website that's got some debt. Usually it's recycled stuff that's off of like PaperStack or other places. So I haven't bought from Dev Expert, but you can look at some stuff. Fixnotes.com. Rob Haitha, who runs this, he does basically he offers a service to evaluate your note files to help you clean them up. And then he's got some notes on there available for sale. 10x or auction.com has some commercial notes that you can take a look at stuff from time to time. Mission Capital is one of the bigger ones, along with DebtX, two of the bigger platforms that a lot of the bigger banks use from. You're not going to be buying from those platforms usually. Note Trader Exchange, the guy at San Diego, he's supposedly got some stuff, but I've never bought from him as well. But I wanted to throw that stuff up there. Now these are not. We've bought from PaperStack, Watermark, SN, auction.com in the past, but I don't usually. I'll use these platforms to find sellers, and then I'll contact the sellers directly and often get a lot better deal on more deals than just the one or two that they have up on the website. Okay. Any questions about that before we move on to session number 4? I know I'm covering a lot of information here, guys. This is why it's recorded. You can go back and watch. This is also why it's a start of things. We cover a lot of stuff here, but we cover a whole lot more in our 3-day workshop as well. So we spent a whole day on just showing you how to find note deals. The first day on Friday of the 3 days, all just about finding deals. And we cover this a whole lot more comprehensive, how we reach out, what do we say, what you shouldn't say, and stuff like that going forward. Okay.